Today's project is going to be making a rattle. An example of one I have here, it's not glazed yet, but it has been fired. And if you listen, you can hear the sound inside. So what's inside is a number of tiny pieces of clay. So we're gonna, and it's hollow so that they rattle around inside and you can shake it. So to start with, we're going to use one of your bigger pieces of clay that you should have. They're about 1 pound. And if you have some scraps handy, especially if they're kind of dried out, those would be great to use in the rattle inside. So I think I'll start with the pieces that go inside. I went ahead and made a number of tiny little balls of clay. I'm not sure how many's there, about 20. You don't want so many that there's not going to be room for them to move around in there. But you can just take tiny pieces of clay and leave them like that. You can make them into little balls if you want and get them made ahead of time, and we'll just set them out of the way. And it's actually good if they dry out a little bit. All right, so our big chunk of clay, we need to cut that into 2 pieces, but not 2 pieces the same size. So to cut it, you can just break a piece off. If you have some dental floss or a wire or something different that you want to use to cut it in half, you could use that. I'm going to use cutting wire here, but like I said, dental floss works the same. And I'm going to cut it into about 1/4. So I'm going to have a big piece and a small piece. So I'll go ahead and cut through there and set this piece off to the side. And so the first piece I'm going to do is I'm going to take it and pound it into more of a ball just by using the palm of my hand, pounding those corners. You can tap them on the table a little if you want. You don't need to be banging it on the table. You want it to, you don't want it to get flat, or you can just squeeze it with your hand. And we're going to start with making our basic pinch pot. So I will start by pushing my thumb in and going fairly deep, but not all the way through. And then I will start pinching the side, turning it slowly, making it get bigger, and my goal is to get the walls the same thickness all the way around. So the things you want to watch out for in your pinch pot is that you're not just pinching the rim, but that you're getting all the way in there and pinching. Now you can make this into something if you like. I think I'm going to make mine into a ladybug. I recently read that ladybugs are lucky, and I have a bunch actually that hatched in my kitchen recently. So I'm going to make a ladybug rattle. So I'm going to make it into kind of a round, maybe not quite as pointy as this one, but this one does fit nicely in my hand. So I'm going to work on making this fairly round and smooth. This is going to get closed up, so it doesn't, it's not like a bowl where I want to really make sure the inside is smooth. It doesn't matter as much as the outside. But I do want them to be about the same thickness. So I want to be careful this part isn't getting too thin, but that it's the same thickness up here as it is out here, down at the rim. And smooth that off a bit. I can get a tiny bit of water if I find I'm getting some cracks anywhere. And I want to make sure there's room in here for the little clay balls to move around. and rattle. So that's going to be my ladybug. So with my other piece of clay here, I need to make that big enough that it will fit on there. So I don't really want to make it a pinch pot per se, but I am going to squeeze it, make it a little bit rounded. If you want it to be flat, you can use your roller and roll it if you'd like. I want mine to be a little bit curved, so it's kind of like a pinch pot. I'm just flattening it out by hand. I can stop and measure once in a while. That fits pretty well, maybe a little too big. I can trim a little bit off. All right, so once I have my two pieces, I need to put the balls in before I close it up. So just feeling for any thick spots there. Okay, so I don't want all my little balls of clay to stick together. So I am going to use, this is 1 ply of a tissue, and I may just cut that in half. You can use a piece of toilet paper, works well. Just 1 square is all you need. A little piece of paper towel is okay. If you're experiencing a shortage of paper products, you can just go ahead and put the balls directly in here. I have found sometimes they stick and take a while to, you gotta kind of bang it really hard to get them to rattle around later. So especially if your clay balls are still fairly moist like mine are. I am going to wrap them up in here. So the little piece of paper towel or Kleenex will just burn away in the kiln. So I am going to put them, I don't want to squish them together. So I am going to kind of put them along here. We're not scoring them or adding water or anything, so they will not really stick to each other unless you squish them later. So I'm going to put them in there and just roll this up into a little package like that. And that is going to go into my bowl. The paper will burn away in the kiln, and then the little balls will just be left loose in there. And I think this is a fairly big rattle. I think I will just stick a few more balls in there. So you can decide how many you want to put in there. You don't want it to be full because they need room to move around. Okay, and now to attach this, I'm gonna rough up the surface here. You can use your fork. You can use your wooden stick just to draw some lines. And then I'm also going to scratch this up. Again, I'm not being super careful because I know I'm not going to be able to see in here, so I'm not worried about having scratch marks visible. And then painting on a little water. Go this way. So I do have plenty of extra clay there. I'm going to press that down, and I am just going to trim off some of this excess. And now I want to seal that seam really well. We did this on the box. And when we did the bottom of the toothbrush holder. So I am gonna take that extra clay there and move it across the seam and blend this all in to make that seam invisible. Once I get it sealed, I can put a little more pressure on it. So what I have done is create a big air bubble inside there. I do need to be careful not to squish it because I could press it in. And if you're having trouble, if your clay is pretty soft and you're having trouble not squishing it, you may set it aside for a little while, let it firm up a little bit, and then you can come back and do some more smoothing. I'm going to smooth out all my finger marks here. All right, once you have it nice and smooth, you can go ahead and decorate it. So on this one, I just drew some fun things. I drew a sun and just some squiggly lines, a moon, some more fun stuff. You can just decorate it. You could write something on there. This one I'm going to turn it into a ladybug. So let's see, a ladybug. So the ladybug's head is going to be there. So I'm just going to draw so that part will be the black. I'll paint that black to be the ladybug's head. And then the wings, I'll draw a line down the center here. Make it a little curved. And then I'll draw on some circles that will be the black dots. And this will be my good luck ladybug rattle. I can glaze red and black. And then on the other side, of course you can make yours something entirely different. What you don't want to be doing is adding a lot of extra pieces to this because you want to be able to rattle it without worrying about breaking off, you know, ears and tails. So anything that you want to decorate it with should be carved on, unless you want to add something flat. So if I wanted to, I could actually take some clay and make the dots raised if I wanted to. So I could take that, score it, and stick it on there, and it's still fairly flat. So those could be my ladybug dots. If I wanted to add those raised pieces, that would be a fine way to do it. But again, it's flat, and when I hold on to it and shake it, these aren't going to get knocked off. Whereas I'm not going to put antennae or anything on it because those would break off too easily. Or if I wanted to make it a cat face, I would just draw on the cat face features. I could just do a nose and eyes and draw on the ears instead of adding pieces of clay to it. And the last thing you want to do when you're done, very, very important, is we do need to poke a hole in this because right now it's acting like a balloon, and if you let it dry, it will shrink, and because there's air in there, it won't be able to shrink and it will crack open probably on your seam. So in the bottom or someplace, if you want to make it part of the design, you could do that. I'm just going to poke a hole in the very bottom here with my stick. That goes all the way through. So that's not big enough for any of the clay balls to fall out of, but the air can escape out of there so that it won't crack as it dries and shrinks. And the moisture can escape so that it's not going to break in the kiln. So a tiny hole, doesn't need to be even that big. I wouldn't make it any bigger than that. So, and make sure it goes all the way through. And hopefully none of your balls are that tiny that they will fall through. So you can't hear it right now because the clay is all wet and it just sort of thuds, but once it gets fired, it will sound like that. This one has the hole incorporated into the decoration here. I forget which one, but one of those holes goes all the way through, and that's how the air and moisture got out of this one. Okay, have fun with your clay rattles.